the hell, that's not our business. Why are we doing that? And then we did capstone programs. And so we're very excited about it. It's somewhat risky from a brand perspective because we're getting into the school reform area, which is another reason that we are building this separate brand. And in fact, we're trying to have it both ways. The official name of the organization will be 3DE by Junior Achievement, but we'll use that name selectively. In audiences where being associated with Junior Achievement is important, it'll be by Junior Achievement. In other areas, it'll be strictly 3DE. It's the first time that we've come up with a program where we're getting calls from school districts all excited about this, because what Jack has learned, and I guess what I learned through this, is schools are throwing up their hands. They basically don't know how to fix the problem. When they originally went to Jack, their comment was, you know, we have all the buzzwords, but we just don't know how to do it, whereas you do. And so that's kind of where we're heading. So when you hopefully start hearing about 3DE soon, that is the story, that it's actually a J program be rolling out. It could very well, as we enter our second century, it could be the future of junior achievement. So we're pretty excited about that.
Do you have some test markets that you're going to try this in?
Well, it's already in Atlanta. We're in 4 schools, and we're in Orlando. Going to go into Fort Lauderdale, Florida schools. I think it's the 3rd largest district in the country. We need to get to the West Coast. We need somewhere in the Midwest, and we need somewhere in the Northeast. So phase 2 will really start to build that out. We're going to be very slow, very deliberate about doing it. But as you know from your experience, this is very different than anything we've ever done before. The whole idea of model fidelity, the whole idea of a direct line reporting relationship is very, very different. Any questions on operations before we go into our award winners back here? No. Nope. Okay. Julie?
Jack, when you were talking about the schools in Atlanta, are those 4 high schools or are they K through 12?
I'm sorry, they're high schools.
High schools.
Yeah. Yeah, that focus of 3DE will be high schools.
So it's penetration deep into the education. It's not, you're not getting more kids. So you're not going to have a large growth in the student population for this, are you?
With 3D, no, it's a depth strategy. The long-term strategy is that if we can get 10% of American high schools, you're talking about 1.5 million kids in that program. But to put that in perspective, with all the stuff you read about charter schools, it only represents about 5% of high schools in the United States. So this would have a much more significant impact.
It seems like also you're going to be hiring a whole different type of person.
Absolutely.
And it's going to require some skill levels that have not been traditionally applied with organizations.
You know, I would equate it, it's very similar. Those of you remember when Project Business. Remember we started bringing teachers into the organization, how foreign that was to many of us. So I think it's going to be kind of the same thing.
And the board is very supportive?
Board is very supportive about it, absolutely. I mean, we looked at every option from keeping it as just a department at JUSA to spinning it off as a totally separate organization. And in the end, the board is the one that directed that, you know, you want to maintain ownership of it, but you want to kind of separate it out. Right now, our people are overwhelmed, frankly, just in the blended learning space. For once, we were ahead of the curve in terms of change in schools. You know, you read all about blended learning, and it really varies. Some school districts are totally set up, ready to do it. Others, they have, you know, the line coming into the building and they don't have computers. And so we're positioned well for the future. But right now, some of our areas are running the paper-based kit programs as well as the blended programs. So a bit of a challenge.
What are your detractors saying? What is it they don't like about this concept? What's the risk that they see?
Well, we have some people saying that it's not our mission. And, you know, I say if you look at our purpose statement to inspire, prepare young kids to succeed in a global economy, If they're not graduating from high school, they're not going to succeed. It does have the business bent to it as well. I think the biggest thing is change. The other piece is, why did JUSA give this away? Number one, we didn't give it away, we own it. But the reason we segregated it was really to protect ourselves. That the books, totally separate, so it's not interfering with traditional operations. An entirely different staff that's qualified in that space to do those sorts of things. And some people just don't like that.
How will it be managed?
Pardon me?
How will it be managed as a unit?
You have a separate staff.
Is Jack Harris involved?
Yeah, Jack Harris will, right now he's remaining as the president in Georgia for a year. He's already hired his successor, and then Jack will move over and become CEO of 3DE. And then he's going to bring over some of his staff from Atlanta. And so I'm a little concerned, about that. We have a strong operation in Atlanta, and we just don't want cherry picking of the best people and run into problems with it.
So he will report to you, is that?
Kind of, sort of. I will serve on their board.
Okay.
I've never, my board tells me, yes, when you say jump, you should be saying how high, but the whole deal was, we want to create a board opportunity to attract high net worth individuals that are interested in school reform. And some of them view Jay as like an old economy business. And so we want to give them enough freedom that they operate on their own. But even contractually, the arrangements we have, they can't go off the ranch. I mean, yeah.
So this is a very exciting venture. But the field is littered with hundreds of millions of dollars of failures in public school reform. What are the couple top takeaways that you take from those failed efforts that are guiding your 3D?
Yeah, the takeaway is, number one, that charters are not bad. There's a lot of good charters, but nobody has been able to replicate charters on a mass scale. And the reason for that is just, number one, they don't have the footprint that we have. I mean, what's really unique about Jay, when you think about it, is we've got a relationship with almost every school district in the country already, where some of these charters coming in do not have that. The other piece, and we just met with the Bradley Foundation here in Milwaukee, very conservative, they're kind of part of the Koch Foundation group. They were impressed because they have not seen anybody that has put like the case study approach in, that sort of a learning approach. It's just, a lot of the charters are simply trying to replicate a typical school. So that's sort of where we are. And like I said, there is some risk to this as well. Yeah, Julie?
Are you at the mercy of the local superintendent?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
big, I think.
Yeah. Now, again, the experience in Atlanta or in Georgia, which is still limited, we'll give you that. The contract that's signed, it's pretty hefty on their part in terms of what they're agreeing to do. But again, a lot of these guys are throwing up their hands because they don't know what to do. But the contract has survived superintendent turnover. The school has survived high school principal turnover. So the initial results, and think about it politically. If I'm the principal of a high school or the superintendent of a district that has this high school in it, and the numbers are getting better and you're getting taken off of the chronic underperformer list, that makes me look good. And so that's really, to me, getting to your point, Don, that's the trick. It's Jack would refer to this as an incision strategy, that rather than coming in from the outside and fixing a school, we're fixing it from the inside out.
And are there any other national organizations focused on school reform that you're collaborating with?
No, there are many academy, like the National Association of Science or National Academy of Science, a lot of academy programs, but they're more specialized towards STEM or, one or particular other thing. So not at this point. Now, they may serve us.
So this is all focused on underperforming schools?
Yes, initially, absolutely. Although that's one of the questions we've had. You know, the big question is, okay, when we go to a big union state, how's that going to go? And the other question is, does this work anywhere? So in Georgia, one of the schools, at least, that he's adopted it into is a pretty good operating high school. So it has worked in both.
Jack, who hires the principal?
The principal is hired jointly between JA and, it's like a principal within a principal, so like an assistant principal. And it's a joint thing, just like the hiring of the teachers is a joint thing. So this is really different, not just for us, it's really different for the school system. Donna?
I think Jack's expense right now is like $250,000 a school, something
Right.
like that. With the new structure and everything unfolding, who picks that up? Is it the fundraising that's going on for 3DE will raise the money that will go to a market and pay the $250 to do that school? Or is the local operation supposed to raise that $250? And then the fear of if it doesn't renew itself, and I'm a big believer in this, I think it's great, so I'm not knocking it, but the $250, if you ever don't have the $250 to match the school's contribution to the school that used to be there, that's kind of scary.
Yes, and so initially the plan is that National 3DE, working collaboratively with JUSA, will raise this $54 million to launch this out. But when we go to a local school district or a local area, the cost of the school right now is about $250. He's actually, as he's replicating, is getting it down to $150 per school. But at the $250, so 20% of that $250, what is that, 50 grand, needs to be raised locally. The other $200,000 comes from the national entity. Over time, those will change. But we knew going into this that if we wanted the kind of top-down control, we had to bring money to the table, and so that's where that came from.
One more question. We got time constraints.
So by setting up this separate entity, does this circumvent the franchise agreement as it relates to funding
No.
the local areas?
No, it does not. We agreed up front that 3DE will be subject to all the same permission-based fundraising that regular JAs.
So your $55 million is going to have to come with sources that presumably would be in
Are in local markets, yeah. Now, the big difference is, at least initially, is they're come from sources that would have never given JA money. The Walton Family Foundation has been a huge supporter of charter schools. That's all they gave to. 3DE is the first non-charter school they're giving us money to. Guys like Richard Branson would never give JA money. Very interested in that. I mean, it's unique. What has happened in Atlanta, and if we can replicate this, is that Jack has not lost any money from current JA funders, but they're giving more. And that's another reason we created a separate entity. What the funders told us is, we can give you more money as long as it's a separate entity. And so that's where it comes out. Now, will there be cannibalization? I had a board member say, well, if you're going to be cannibalized, it's better that you cannibalize yourself than somebody else doing it. Because, think back through our history. How many JA supporters in the after-school program ended up saying, this in-school thing is so much better, and their money went there. And then capstone facilities came along and funders. So some of it's going to happen, but I think it's just the natural order. But the exciting part of this is a lot of high net worth individuals and foundations that are interested in this approach.
Jack, is this a pure philanthropy play, or do you see something like social impact bonds or social investment funds?
We've talked about that. I'm just not sure where that's going to go, Don. Because if it continues to have the success it has, I think the demand is going to be tremendous, and then the question comes at how you're going to fund it. Even 10%, 1.5 million kids seems reasonable, but it's a lot of money still. Especially to your point, Donna, you got to keep every year doing it.
I guess endowing it is the the ideal world, and then your income is how you're going to fund the
Yeah.
school each year. I think that's part of Jack's strategy, but I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you, of our 3 pillars, career and work readiness right now is hot, hot, hot. You know, you've read the news. There's not enough skilled employees for businesses to hire. And so we're even facing in some of our states where they're doing a school to work thing in the true sense that when a kid graduates from high school, XYZ company hires them, they work there while they're going to school. And so it's a whole different world that, you know, we're starting to face.